So this is a basic checklist to go through graphics and later on some shooter techniques to help you with Planetside specifically. So the first thing you'll want to do is check for your FPS in-game. So I believe Alt F does this. It does, but there's also from preference now just type /FPS, and in the bottom left corner you can see a reference now for your in-game FPS. You can see how it will drop looking at different things and more consuming aspects of the game. The ideal target is to have something above 60 FPS, and if you notice that your FPS is hovering around there in VR, then you haven't changed any of your graphics really, then you probably have space to make some improvements there. Otherwise, if you're below 60, you definitely need to do this next part, and basically that is to go escape and then go down to settings, and then you got general and interface, but then you got graphics, and that's where you will be improving your FPS hopefully. I'm not going to change my settings right now, but the main thing you'll want to do is go to overall quality and just go very low, but you want to keep textures on ultra. You want to make sure shadows is also off. Basically everything else except texture would be on low and shadows off. Beyond that, you'll want to have all these boxes here unchecked. You'll want your render distance, which is probably around 4,000 meters or 6,000 meters. You want that to be probably around 1200 if you're interested in vehicle combat and air combat. If you're still struggling for FPS, especially in like larger fights, just drop it down to 500. What that does is, and I can't see if it shows it off much here, let's test it. It's not the best place VR because it doesn't really show it off, but basically that mountain in the distance does disappear, and the idea there is that it just helps maintain a higher level FPS because you're not rendering as much stuff constantly. Doesn't matter though when you're in just a big giant fight, like even 48 or up to 96. You'll just be struggling to render even at 500 because it's just too many planet mans. I think vertical field of view is another important place that you can sort of grab a few more frames. If we're up at 74, and I mean, I'm sure I've seen people have wider field of view, I think, if they go into the INI file. And I used to play at 74 as well, but performance issues previously made me go back to 65, and now I'm used to it at 65, and also there's just been, I don't know how relevant this is, but there's just been a local wisdom that it helps make targets look larger. So if you're concerned really with hitting people, then that might be another little trick to do, is make it 65. If you're still struggling for FPS, again, you just want something to be around 60 or higher. You just ideally want to be above 60 for most, if not all times. And if you can't get away with them big fights, you just can't get away with big fights. But smaller fights, 60 FPS or higher. And something that can help there is like vertical field of view. So I mean, I don't think it's going to show off for my performance because it's pretty much above this, and like I've just got a mid-tier card, so it's not the greatest anymore. GTX 970, I think? That's what it was. But something even like 60 field of view is fine, but I'm at 65. And Render quality, that's something that, because I used to play on a laptop years ago, and if you just drop that down to like even 60% or 70%, but if you're really desperate, go to 50%. I used to do this, and it makes everything blocky, but it got me an extra 5 FPS sort of thing. When you add it with all the other stuff, it helped get me around 60 to 70 in medium fights, small fights, not too much stuff going on, and that is just so important. If you're having problems with your frames and you need them to be above 60, these are some of the things you can do. The reason you've got Ultra for texture is apparently that's its default state, and to change it to another setting, like anything else lower, it draws your CPU power or something, but I don't know how true it is, but that's something to try as well, and it's also counterintuitive, so that's why we have to mention it specifically. But that's mainly graphics, so that is it really for FPS. There's even something else you can look up in INI, just changing, which one is it? I think it's tracer? No, particles. I think particles you can turn off completely, and that means no explosions, no tracer fire. I don't know what else it would take away. Smoke. I think smoke got at least a minimum value, no matter what you do. But yeah, that's another method if you're truly desperate. I'm not going to go into that because I just haven't done that, and it's not really relevant to me, so sorry. But this is the main package of options you've got to get some better performance if you're struggling, and it's more than likely that most players' computers will struggle one way or the other. And I mean, me personally, I'm playing with this just because I like to have the game look a bit better, though it's honestly not as good as it could be. But, you know, regular fights that are very large on the main servers, excluding Briggs, will have very large population concentrations, so that means a lot of rendering, a lot of different players, so the FPS does drop a lot. And if I had shadows even on low, that would just tank it on the regular to around 60 or lower, and that's just not a fun experience. Another tip is also audio, and in audio, the main thing you want to look at is sound effects, because that thing relates to everything in game that matters, right? Everything that is sounds of players, vehicles, specific actions that those things are doing. So light assault jetpacks, hearing the jetpacks going off, hearing footsteps, hearing infiltrator cloak sounds, and they're Empire specific, so you do want to hear them, so you know that's an enemy infiltrator cloaking around me. Be prepared. You want to hear people's call-outs. You want to hear, you know, specific gunfire, which way it's coming from. If you've got decent headphones with directional audio, I'm sure most of them do. I can't imagine it not really helping. I guess it's related to the different software they run. I got no idea, really. But yeah, have that higher than the other main ones here, basically. So like master volume, I've got that pretty low just because I might be listening to something else, like music or other audio outside the game, but I usually have it actually at 30. But the point is, it's below sound effects itself because it doesn't overwhelm. If anything's going to be the loudest in the game, it's going to be the sound effects. The voice channels, I've just got that high enough, like that's a standard 140. If you're not really playing in a platoon or a squad, and I encourage you to do so, then you can probably just turn that pretty low. But I mean, even proximity chat is pretty important. Music is completely zero because that's just unnecessary. It only plays, I think, doing base captures that are about to happen. It's like the last 30 seconds or a minute, I think. And it's just distracting. It's just more literal noise in the way of trying to seek out other threats and such. So I just turn it off. I got dialogue though up a bit just because that only lasts a few seconds, and I don't know, I just still enjoy that. But yeah, that's pretty much audio. And in voice, if you don't want to listen to anyone's voice ever and such, and I think even this can help with FPS if you turn it off, but you just do that. Basically, you will never hear anyone, and no one will ever hear you. But I strongly discourage that because communication is a really good tool in this game. And I mean, some players, let's say most players, don't necessarily respond to you all the time, but you'll find the other people that do if you do have this. So I mean, you have no chance otherwise, really. So yeah, just give it a go, and if it becomes unbearable, then just turn down like ducking and stuff. Because again, sound effects is king. You need that to be relatively higher than dialogue and all that kind of jazz. Yeah, so that's pretty much that. I don't think there's anything else to really show off except personal preference. You got your Empire colors, so you can change them to be like your allies are blue and your enemies are all red, but I specifically have mine as each Empire specific, just to help differentiate, and I don't find it to be problematic if I'm playing a different faction from time to time. I've turned off tutorials and hints, but if you're like a new player, I mean, maybe just keep them on for the moment. If you get sick of hearing the voices and that, then just turn it off. Show mission, turn that off, unless you really want guidance for where the next base is. But it's seriously misleading. There's no one, it's just a silly little, I guess, algorithm that says defend this or attack this with no context as to why you should attack or defend. It just says go here. It tries to give you an objective that doesn't have any other context. It's just the server saying go here. I mean, its context is that it thinks you should go there because it's next in line for bases to defend or capture, etc. But seriously, it's just misleading. You need to learn how to read the map and decide where to attack and such. Don't let the server try to tell you where, because it's seriously just a dead end in terms of trying to read where opponents want to go, and I mean where to find a fight and such. I had loot drop turned off as well, but that was just because it was a distracting icon in the middle of the screen that I don't think is as relevant anymore because the implant system got changed, and that's what really did show up during fighting a lot. It might change a bit more if... Actually, no, I don't think it does. I mean, when you buy a new weapon or unlock a new thing, it'll show up in the top, but it doesn't really matter. Just turn it off, honestly. It's just more noise. That's pretty much it for the graphics section. I'll show you the specific target range next. So this part is related to finding a quieter space to shoot at some targets in the VR room. Basically, if you look at the map and you see rendering everywhere, there's all these vehicles, there's all these terminals, and there's all these infantry scattered around everywhere. That all drains your FPS. So if you are struggling with FPS issues, there is a base, or not a base, but there's another target range sort of thing that I like personally, just here at the waypoint. And to get there, you just grab an aircraft, fly down to the tower, and grab a Sunday, because you want to be constantly reloading your loadouts and such, and between classes and stuff. So yeah, we'll go there now. So you land, grab a Sunday, doesn't matter what you got on it, you're just using it as a mobile terminal. Then head over to that waypoint. Takes forever to deploy. So yeah, here we go. This is the range, mainly the targets on the right here. What we care about, the things on the left, like the max, that's cool to test against as well, I guess, in the Sunday, but you're really focusing on standing. Also, to bring your mouse up, left alt key, and left alt take it away again, and basic control. But yeah, you're looking at these three targets, and then maybe shooting at the target top left. But yeah, I'm just gonna go through now the mouse sensitivities, and then we'll look at the actual loadouts and stuff and some shooting mechanics. So now this is where we look at your mouse sensitivities. Keep in mind that I've got my actual mouse DPI set at 250, and that's sort of like where the rest of this connects in game, because I mean you could have like a really low mouse sensitivity and still have a high DPI and it still doesn't convert over pretty well. But not the most technical about this, but the general idea is that, and the general philosophy is that a lower mouse sensitivity will help your accuracy. It'll help you control where you're shooting and control the recoil that results from when you're shooting. And so most of this, I mean basically the three main things you want to look at, and that's only if you're looking at different scopes, there's really only two if you're using it one scope set, is your mouse sensitivity itself and your aimed mouse sensitivity for the 1x and 2x, and I think the 3x. I still don't know which one's different. It's really bad that I'm not checking this before I do this, but whatever. And your scope mouse sensitivity. These three things here are related to vehicles. Ground a vehicle, and flight is aircraft. So don't worry about them. You can play around with them to your own preference to see what works there, but mouse sensitivity is general mouse sensitivity when you're just running around, and also I believe in turrets. But right now I'm moving my mouse around probably, like, see, this is why people do that measurement thing with the mouse pad, but I mean I'm guessing so from looking this way to get away to almost a 180, that was across my entire mouse pad. My mouse pad being angled, it's around 40 centimeters. Let's do that again. I mean, yeah, it was barely getting that at 40 centimeters, and I'm showing that off right now because I've actually got an extra trick that helps with this lower mouse sensitivity, and this is in keybinds. So I won't go there just yet, but basically mouse sensitivity, it affects your general movement looking around as an infantry. And I've got that low because it helps transition into the aiming sensitivity. Like in my mind, if I have a high sensitivity player and then I then suddenly turn, if I transition from a high sensitivity scenario into a low sensitivity scenario, I think it's very off-putting. Like that's just personal preference. So beyond that, you then will find yourself looking at aimed mouse sensitivity and scope mouse sensitivity. And for those, I mean, for the scopes, these like 3.4, I think 3.4. This is really stupid that I haven't checked. 4 times and higher scopes. But I think it is 3.4 and up. Aimed mouse sensitivity is for 1 times and 2 times. In that world, I would honestly just say stick with the 1 times, and if you want more enhanced zoom, go 3.4 or even 4 times. Now this is for most automatic weapons. This isn't really sniper rifles and stuff, so those things, they're further down. The bolt actions, I also use like a 3.4. But yeah, the real preferences I think you'll find are the 1 times, 3.4 for most weapons. Don't bother with the 2 times. I mean, again, it's up to personal preference, but I think you'll find that it's stuck in this world between trying to give you a bit more zooming in power, but still not quite refined. I don't know how to describe it, but I mean, I used to do 2 times, but then I just went back to 1 times. And then I've become addicted to 3.4. It's pretty stupid, but I'll try to put 3.4 now on pretty much all my weapons. Unless it's a very high fire rate weapon, then I might just leave the 1 times. But that's pretty much it. I guess I'll try and show this off. So this being significantly, well, nearly half as well, lower than general mouse sensitivity. So jump across and grab a 1 times. My personal preference for TR is just like, I don't know what you would call it, T sight. And then basically like just moving the mouse back and forth. This is how far I'm getting, because again, lower mouse sensitivity will help you have more deliberate control. And I mean, probably shooting from this distance, I don't know if this is gonna be that accurate, but I mean, hopefully I can show off here that it does help. Like 160. Let me just bring that up to like the default, right? That's as close as I get. Like, look at this, alright? I am barely moving my mouse, and it is. I can just look everywhere. It's ridiculous. Now watch me try and shoot. Like, it's not necessarily out of control because I know how to control the mouse, but it's still very off. And you especially see it at longer ranges. It honestly feels slower. Like, let me go back to my thing. Let me go back to mine. And just watch me try and shoot. I feel, I mean, this just could be biased, but to me, I feel more confident shooting with a smaller mass sensitivity. The higher mass sensitivity, I think it just gets you caught out with being accurate, and you have to be slower in your shooting more than what this lower sensitivity has, and that does matter, because if the other person in the first example has the initiative, they started shooting you first and are pretty accurate, then you being slower to shoot just adds a bigger gap for you to come back, basically. Like, you would have to be dead accurate, and the thing is, I think at higher mass sensitivity, it's harder to be consistent with that. So yeah, that's why I have a smaller aim mouse sensitivity. My scope is a bit higher because I think when it's really zoomed in, I mean, the carve is a bad example, but I'll just try it anyway. So I think it's this one. Nah, I don't like that stupid dot. Yeah, I prefer the circle. So like, this is what I usually use, like a 3.4 with a dot in the middle for all factions, really. The carve is a bad example here because it is a high, oh, its recoil just kicks. But yeah, I'll just try it out. You can sort of see him shooting over the head because of the recoil. You'd probably just want to aim further down, so he's still there. I mean, let's wait for him to reform. Horrible shooting for this distance. You're probably better just doing it one times, I guess. But I think I'm just trying to show off that if I did this accuracy down to 6, it's just not, like, that's not feasible, because when you're zoomed in at close range especially, people do strafe in front of you and such, and this won't really, like, even at lower, like, the recoil still wins out in the cone of fire, so, I mean, burst firing is I don't think it works as much. Like, I found the 2 to be, like, it gives me movement still, it gives me the possibility of tracking someone, and I still actually find myself sometimes not being able to track people that move a bit too far. Oh, come on. Seriously? I mean, this is me trying to hit people's heads, and that's just stupid. Because I'm not that sort of shooter. I usually just aim straight at the chest. How is that Max still alive? Way too many bullets. This is why you have the Sunday right, so. Also, another trick, real quick. Shoot a rocket launcher or whatever. Switch to a different weapon. Then reload. Or what's the word? Get your loadout again. Resupply. I think that's the word they call it there. And then you'll notice that your rocket launcher is refilled, and it's far shorter. So you have a target like that, just reload, switch again. You can just spam rockets. It's a bit of a cheese tactic, but it's a mechanic to be aware of. Like, say if you're Sunday versus their Sunday. like, the TTK is so much shorter. Because, I mean, shoot once, I've already shot another rocket by now, and by then, I think you get the space of 3 rockets to 1, or 2.5 to 1, like, just roughly. You just put out so much more firepower. That's only if the terminal's relatively close by. It's just something to be aware of. So, that was looking at mouse sensitivity, and that was a lot of digression. It's not a very focused video, this, but yeah, I mean, just keep playing around with the stuff, but the general philosophy here was to have a lower mouse sensitivity. Now, specifically with the mouse sensitivity itself, not the aiming ones, I have that low, like I said before, because it's jarring if it's high and going to a low, and to get around it, and also combined with this way of always looking center, almost, there's a keybind, and it's under infantry, or keybinds, and it's these. It's turn left and turn right. I don't think they're equipped by default, but this is where having like stuff on your mouse, if you have extra buttons on your mouse that you can spare, would be really good. And I mean, even on your keyboard, I had at least one, which was I put for C. Now again, my keybinds are all different to what you'll have. You just need to find out what works for you, but I've done C just because it's below WASD, so it's easy to reach. And that's for turning left, and turn right is on my right side of my mouse, so that's easy to reach as well. And basically what these things do is if I try to turn now, I'm doing this manually with my mouse, and because I'm physically constantly moving the mouse while I run around and I'm trying to track what's going on, there is a space before, like, oh, there's a target. I have to move my mouse again quickly into the center and then start shooting. Whereas if I'm using, like, this is turn left, like, the key thing is I'm not moving my mouse necessarily. This is turn right, of course. I'm not moving my mouse constantly to do this. The mouse is just primed and ready. I mean, you can still make some small adjustments, but the mouse is being available to immediately begin shooting, rather than running around constantly looking left and right, and then running out of mouse space. I mean, because it's in your physical world, on your desk, you've only got so much mouse space, and if your mouse is constantly on the edge, and then you got to reacquire it in the center, these are microseconds to seconds worth of time that you're losing before you can actually start engaging. So you'll want to have that available by having the turn left and turn right keys, because that means you are pretty much ready. So you start taking damage to your left, you just turn around left a bit, and then, you know, like, it's hard to show without a live example, I guess, and I honestly couldn't probably replicate it. It's just how I've developed to play, and it might make sense as you go on, but try it out. Turn left, turn right. If you make them naturally easy to reach while moving through a mouse key and a keyboard key, or both on mouse, I don't know how you shoot, I think you'll find that it gives you a bit of an edge with not necessarily time to kill, but like time to engage. It helps shave off some critical moments, because the game really does have close moments with whoever is decided the victor being the one that says they killed the other person first. I mean, it sounds obvious, but you'd be surprised by how many wins you can get by just surviving because you killed the other dude by a fraction of a second quicker. Again, I think I'm trying to just show off that the low mouse sensitivity is connected to this way of movement, and that helps feed into another part of approaching fights, and that is always looking, I, I guess you call it to the horizon sort of thing, like neutral in the middle. You don't look down often, because that again takes time to move up. You don't look up unless there's something you're looking at. You're looking at the horizon typically because you'll be on even ground often. So, I mean, you'll adjust it to when you're on a hillside, you'll be slightly looking up, and you look left, see what I mean? Like, the turn right, it was turn right, and then turn left. These keys help you shift your focus, help shift your gaze towards something to focus on far quicker and efficiently, rather than using your mouse to do all the work. You're offloading from the mouse onto other parts and, you know, giving yourself that edge. Alright, so the next part I'll talk about the shooting techniques that I have. I mean, I almost cover them in the scopes, but I'll try and go through a different detail of them. Okay, so each empire I'm going to just be showing basically the basic default weapons. I'm not going to be in VS or NC, but the same principles will apply to them as well. So for like TR, it's the Carve, the Track 5, the Cycler, and I mean you've got the 99 SV, I believe it was, but I mean we could switch that out to be a the Armistice. I could even do the PDW, but I mean, let's make it the Armistice and just get rid of all the attachments. But yeah, like starting with a heavy, you look at the scope you want. So if you really want it, go the 1x, or my preference is a 3.4. Barrel for the Carve. If you've got the certs, or if you just want to buy it, get the flash suppressor. I really wouldn't look at the suppressor itself, but that's really only when you are looking for things to spend on for your weapon. It's a niche. It's not really needed for the actual functionality. The real functionality is what's going to help you. These rail attachments. Forget the flashlight. Only put that on a secondary. Personal preference. Forward grip or laser sight. And because aiming down sight is such a focus in like the method that I play, I'd say go for the forward grip, and I'll show you anyways a method of hip fire that you'll just try to use anyway, because most of the guns have decent hip fire for the range that you're supposed to be using them at, right? If they're outside of like 5 meters, you're really drawing at like maybe 10 meters, I guess. But yeah, anything outside of that, you want to be aiming down sight. And so to help maximize aiming down sight ability, you'll want the forward grip. Whereas a laser sight, it just helps with hip firing. And I mean, more power to you if you're using an SMG, or maybe a fast firing carbine. But at the same time, I still think a forward grip is helpful in most situations. But yeah, so like this is my loadout for the Carve. The Commissioner, this is to really show off to everyone. If you are looking to buy a weapon or unlock a weapon for your secondary, just get the Commissioner. You can look at the other weapons if you want, really, but in all honesty, this thing is the most reliable weapon. Personal preference, but that's just how I feel. I just put like a 1x on it. And this is where the question for you comes as, are you dealing with infiltrators a lot? Or do you feel like you need the extra hipfire help? So for this weapon, I personally run the Dark Light a lot, because if you're trying to hold the capture point in a base and it's contested because there's a sneaky infiltrator somewhere, The dark light will help you find them pretty quickly, and there's other niche examples where there's an infiltrator hiding somewhere outside a control point and you're trying to hunt them down and they think, oh, I'm going to escape. The dark light will find them. But beyond that, if you really want to make it even more accurate, because that's the thing, the gun is already decently accurate, you can just go to laser sight, and the laser sight will make it even more dead accurate. But I'll just do it with the dark light to show off that sort of accuracy. I do a decimator. It, what's the word? It has a small lead on the default dumbfires, but I mean, I just use it for the consistency of that. It just helps kill maxes and that a bit easier if you get the direct shot and vehicles and stuff. You lose one shell or like one rocket. These dynamics could change as well because of an upcoming combined arms patch that the devs are looking into releasing sometime soon, relatively. So it's still supposed to be the highest tier damage. I mean, compare that to the dumbfire, like the ML7, I can't remember what the other ones are, the S1 something for the VS and whatever. I mean, the splash damage is a bit worse than the decimator, but it's got an extra 200 damage. I'm sure it helps in some way. But honestly, you'd be fine using your dumbfire. It doesn't matter. Ideally, yeah. It's just personal preference, I think. I've gone the decimator. But yeah. So I'm just going to show this example with a one-time scope, but now, I mean, the whole purpose of being out here at this specific place for the range is that there's 3 targets in front of us, and a 4th for extra shooting. The idea would be to minimize the shots per kill, learning the recoil, so just letting no control. Just test your weapon out and you'll see how it recoils. Not to mention the cone of fire. So you want to stand at a certain distance. I mean, 10 meters. You can sort of see the weapon damage models here. I don't look into that stuff too much personally. I just go off the feel of it, and I mean, you put enough bullets into someone, they'll die eventually. But yeah, like, I'm just not the person to talk to about what the ideal engagement range is and stuff. I just fucking shoot people. So yeah, let's say I stand around here. I think it's around 10 meters roughly. I look at the targets, get into the habit of spotting, and try to aim. I mean, because they have their backs to us, you'd want to aim more for the chest rather than the head, but you pick your preference, try to maximize what you're after. But yeah, basically didn't finish that one off. And so just to restate, you will be shooting these targets for long enough that you can feel the muscle memory of the specific weapon. Every weapon has its own form of recoil and cone of fire, but you also want to, again, focus on burst firing to help with that cone of fire, not just the recoil. So I mean, I'll control recoil, but I won't stop firing. So I'll show you the cone of fire. I mean, I was basically running out of mouse space there, and that's why a lower sensitivity is great, because you need smaller amount of space to control the recoil. Like, let me try that again from the top of the mouse pad. Like, again, basically the end of my mouse pad. But yeah, you really shouldn't find yourself an example like that. But now you combine burst firing, so this is without recoil control, but just burst firing. combine these two things together, and you'll find that you're... Again! Every time that person. Infiltrator's a bit different, but yeah. Man, I don't think I'm used to the carve. I haven't played TR in a while, so... Like, I'm just trash. Basically. Which means I need to learn it again. So, ideally, I would be coming out here and getting a feel for how many bullets it takes again to kill. So, that target was not fresh.
Enemy medic in the area.
So, that was the main drill earlier. Just shooting at the targets from a certain distance and learning how many bullets it should roughly take. Keep in mind that on live it'll take possibly a further couple bullets if people are wearing nanoweave, if they've got overshield as a heavy, but the main idea is you get a feel for how much you should be shooting someone, and then that you can reliably switch off to another target afterward, because you want to be able to defeat one opponent and then move on to the next if there's more than one. This little drill though is going to be about hip firing. So the simulation I like to do, and again this is really dependent on the turn left, turn right, is that I have myself standing opposite to the targets to simulate I'm taking fire from behind me, so I just turn around and there's a target. So you just begin hip firing, and you learn the hip fire, cone of fire, and the bursting. So let's just hip fire without bursting and without recoil control, like such. Let's do it without recoil control but bursting. Let's do it with recoil control and bursting. I mean, it wasn't really going to make a difference there, but it will make a difference when you're trying to aim for the head. So you turn around, you can really, and I didn't push this one off, but you can really see how the further target, it just gets way inaccurate. But that's the nature of LMGs and the carve specifically. So yeah, each weapon has its own niche when it comes to hip firing, but this little drill, so like you're ADing, taking damage from behind you, you turn around, take a jump maybe. But yeah, do all that. A really important tip, don't ever stop moving. Even if it's just a little micro movement. Just the way client side hit detection works. Seriously, come on. Since we're here, I'll also do the other classes, so like engineer, the track 5 being the default. I put the 3.4 on it as well with the forward grip. If you want a barrel attachment, I mean, suppressors, they're only really good for CQC, like, you're not going to want to use them at distance, really, because the velocity loss is, it's too much, really. I mean, but if it works for you, it works for you. But a flash suppressor, all it does is make you look a bit further on the minimap, like the little blip, and to me, that's not really the biggest disadvantage. I mean, if people at distance can see that you're showing up further, so what? They still need to find you, they still need to shoot you. Unless you're being super sneaky, in which case, don't have it. But it does stop your traces from showing up on opponents' screens, so that does help minimize that most immediate visual. If they're good at reading the map, fair enough. Otherwise, yeah, they'll have a hard time finding where they're being shot from, besides the damage indicator. But anyways, so engineer, just grab it, stand in front of your targets, key spot them,
Enemy engineer in the area.
because that's a good habit, and then just practice shooting. I guess I should go into the Commissioner and why that's such a good gun as well later. But yeah, just, you know, practice your weapons, see what works. Do the hipfire drill, so... Again, you'd probably be spending a few extra bullets on live, depending on your ping, depending on when the server finally decides, yes, you've killed that person, move on. But yeah, just, again, you're getting the feel for how much the weapons deal damage. I'll go through the medic, and I'll show off the SMG on Infiltrator, just because that's a really good option for Infiltrator. Not everyone can snipe effectively, so you've always got SMGs instead. Medic. TRV, I believe it was. No, it wasn't the TRV. Jesus, what was it? It was the T1. Yeah, T1 Cycler. Keep forgetting this. On this character, I haven't been using the 3.4s, but I would move over to the 3.4s. Again, you can use 1x. It's up to you, personal preference. And all that jazz. And again, forward grip, because it's good to have more control when aiming down sight. And practice. Another thing, I guess, could be like a speed drill. I mean, you gotta get rid of the infiltrators, because they're not representative.
Enemy medic in the area.
They're not representative of a full health character. Oh my god. Get out of here, infiltrator. Thank you. So yeah, you might even want to try speed. And I failed at that. So yeah, it's easy to forget. You need to keep on top of it the weapons you focus on. Even missed some bullets there. And again, I mean, for infiltrators, it's a bit different, but practice shooting. But yeah.
Tango Mike.
Uh-oh. Not Lenny. I hope this guy doesn't be too distracting. There he goes. Lenny. So, Light Assault was this... Oh my god, I forgot all about quick firing weapons. So, this is really important. I hope Lenny doesn't stick around. God, that is distracting. So, in Keybindings, I completely forgot to talk about... this is under infantry specifically. Your slots. So, your default slots will have all the numbers as the different slots. I've still got weapon 1 as 1, but I've actually got weapon 2, so secondaries, as on my mouse, so it's easier to reach. It's more natural for the fire button. My right hand index finger to just reach for that, and then continue shooting. And for my left hand to just reach for 1. So instead of using scroll, which can be a bit unreliable in which weapon you need specifically, I'll be able to go quick fire with the secondary or bring up the primary again. I've also changed melee to E, which is interact by default. I've made interact tab, and I've made scoreboard insert. So I'm not always looking at the scoreboard unless I deliberately want to, because that can just be more clutter. You keep checking the scoreboard, what random reason you got. Just make that somewhere else, out of reach. Anyways, also, what is tilt? Tilt is my utility slot, so you're taking damage. Well, let me just start by default. You're taking damage, you just reach for tilt, and then use medkit. Because there's a mechanic now with medkits where you use them once, and it'll revert back to your primary. So I mean, you can still use scroll again, but the thing about mouse scroll is unreliability. It can end up overdrawing, and those are moments and seconds that you can't get back. Oh my god. I've also got mouse key, number key 2 as my, what do they call it? Do they just call it? They just call it gear slot 3. I think utilities specifically, yeah. Tool could also be the same as mouse slot 3, but basically, hello Lenny. Please don't hurt me. So yeah, gear slot 3 is key 2, so it's just easy to reach for. It's easy to reach for every weapon, right? So, but that's how I mentally mapped it, and that works for me. But the point is, you want to have your weapons easy to reach, because that helps with minimizing the downtime between you being able to react and shoot back. So you've shot a lot of dudes and you need to get your secondary out, so you just whip it out, and then, you know, it's the shortest moment before you can start shooting again. I'll just show off the commissioner real quick. So even at this distance, just aiming. Aim for the head roughly. I mean, infiltrator, I think it's still one shot to the head, right? Yeah. I think they changed it slightly. Maybe nano cloak, I don't know. But yeah, like, why the commissioner for me is so great is because it's still relatively accurate at this distance. He says while missing 3 shots. But that's only aiming for the head. I mean, just aim for the body. And that's really only 3 shots usually. But again, you're only really using this when you're like right up in someone's face and just like, it's just got such high alpha damage. It's a great little gun. Really reliable. Coming around corners. Just wipe people out. Nice little last stand. Rocket rifle. It's a great auxiliary tool for light assault if you got C4 as well. A really good technique with it because you can't aim down sight with it. Like left click is single shot. And right click, which would be aimed down side, is actually automatic fire. A little technique that I've found useful is shooting a couple to be accurate at first, and then shooting the rest. The cone of fire only affects each remaining bullet, not the mag as a whole. So if you've got like 2 remaining, it's still very accurate. So gauge your target, what distance, and learn how to maximize damage output from that sort of example. And also like meleeing is a nice little tool. Up close, like Commissioner, knife, but I mean Infiltrator, Commissioner. Infiltrators lose a lot. Same for the head. You've also got like hold melee. But yeah. Moving on to the SMG, which all classes can use, but I'll just put in the Infiltrator because that's nice. I mean, I just put a 1x on these because they're SMGs. I always will tell people with regular SMGs, just put the advanced laser sight on them. Don't really worry about a suppressor as much. Soft point ammunition. It's typically always recommended. The trade-off again was velocity, right? Yeah, like you get a few extra meters for the maximum damage, and you only lose a small point of velocity. It doesn't feel like the biggest difference because, I mean, where it falls off at, it's already terrible. So you're not using it at range. You're using it at range, you're being silly with it. So yeah. Emotion spotter, great for when holding a point rather than darts, because darts expire far quicker. So yeah. But I mean, the SMG is independent of Infiltrator, but basically this is, you're rarely aiming down sight, at least for me. You're more hip firing. So also F1, I think by default toggles attachments or toggles lights, so turning it off because it does show for opponents. So yeah, hip fire drill with the SMG a lot. The arm specifically just has crazy horizontal accuracy, so well, what's the word? Cone of fire inaccuracy. So plenty. Yeah. So for example,
Take some ammunition.
There you go, bud.
I mean, I guess I could show with the laser sight. The Commissioner should be far more reliable. Quick show of EMPs. They wipe out health now, they don't wipe out player abilities, so heavy assaults with their overshields. If they're not using resist, if they're using nanite mesh or adrenaline, they'll still have that shield, so it's still a bit difficult to take out, but you've still effectively, with EMP grenades, you've still taken out 50% of someone's health because their shields are gone. It's still a very powerful tool. But yeah, that's sort of an example of everything coming together. Yeah, I mean, again, it's just the specifics of each weapon. You just need to learn to get into VR, practice the weapon, and feel like you're confident enough with it, and go from there. And just keep making adjustments to your sensitivities. Look at ways that you can use the key bindings to your advantage, and it all pays off. So, I mean, there could be a whole segment about movement and stuff, but I honestly can't show it off. I'll actually link a different one, which is about the light assault. But as long as those videos are available, that person's channel is it's really good. It's far higher production value than what I'm giving here. This is just another set of ramblings, but at least I've now got an example to give out to people now, because usually I'll just do this in person, and sort of help customize players' circumstances to fit that mold. But this isn't the only way to play the game.
Here.
It's just one version. So yeah, thanks for watching. Hopefully it's been helpful. Just leave a comment if you actually do have a specific question. I'll try and answer. Or even just meet in game on the American or Briggs server. That's where I've got characters. Yeah, thanks.